Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we will review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Pesachim Daf Mem Gimel through Mem Tet, 43 through 49. Mem Gimel. The Gemara addresses the issue of whether women are obligated in certain categories of mitzvot. We have a general halachic principle that women are exempt from mitzvot aseh shazman grama, positive time-bound commandments. But what about mitzvot lo ta'aseh, prohibitive commandments, negative commandments, prohibitions? Here we find that there is equality among men and women. Talmud Rabbi Yishmael, Omer Kra, Ish o Isha ki yasu mikol chatot Adam, that the Torah tells us whether man or woman who shall do among the sins that a person might do. So the Torah compares man and woman to teach you that l'chol onshin shebatorah, with regard to prohibitions, punishments, men and women are the same. And Rashi explains, Mikan shehanashim chayavot al kol eile lo ta'aseh shebatorah, that we see here the women are obligated if they were to violate any of the prohibitive commandments. Mem Daled. 44. Tanya, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Nazir sheshara pito bayayin v'achal kezayit vipat mibin hayayin chayav. If a Nazir who is not allowed to eat or grapes or drink wine have anything of a grape product by virtue of their own promise not to do so, if such a person were to take their bread and dip it into wine and then eat the wine-drenched, wine-soaked bread in sufficient amount that the whole thing is a kezayit of what he ate, that person is liable, that person is chayav, he's guilty. And as for Rabbi Akiva, how does he know that tam ki ikar, that the flavor of the wine is considered like the substance of the wine, and that therefore the kezayit of the bread infused with the wine shall be enough to make him guilty? Well, yalif mi basar b'chalav, he derives it from the law of meat-milk combinations. Isn't it the case that when you cook meat in milk, it only has the flavor of the milk, and yet it's regarded as though the milk is actually present? Hachanami loshna, here also the same thing. It's though the wine is present in full. And as for the rabbis who do not derive the law of tam ki ikar from basar b'chalav, why do they not do so? Because basar b'chalav is a chidush, is a novelty. What is the novelty? So the Gemara suggests that a possible novelty is that the basar was permitted on its own, the chalav was permitted on its own, and only when they combine with each other do they become thereby prohibited. Mem Hey, 45. Hapat she'ipsha, if bread becomes moldy, v'nefsalam le'echol adam, and a person would no longer want to eat it, it's no longer in the category of human food. But a dog would still eat it, it's still animal food, it's still dog food. It still has the capacity to transmit impurity of foodstuff impurity, tumat ochlin. The kabetza, so long as the amount of food here is the size of an egg's bulk, a kabetza. Klal amru, there's a general principle said, betaharot, regarding purity and impurity. Klam yuchad la'echol adam, anything that was human food, tameh will remain impure ad sheyafsil milachol kelev, until such time as even a dog wouldn't eat it. So even though at present a human wouldn't eat it, but because previously a human would eat it and it's still relevant as dog food, it retains its impure status. Mem Vav, 46. Midoraita, according to Torah law, Sarche Shabbat Nasin B'Yom Tov. If a Yom Tov falls on a Friday, you're allowed to do preparation for Shabbat on that Yom Tov Friday. V'Rabbanan hu degazu begezera, but the rabbis made rules against cooking for Shabbat on the Friday Yom Tov. Shema Yomru, lest people say, Ofim Yom Tov aflachol, that you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov even for purposes of a weekday. But the way around this rabbinic prohibition is by means of an Eruv Tavshilin. That when you set aside ceremonially the Eruv Tavshilin, that serves as a reminder, as a heker, that in fact cooking on Yom Tov for another day is permitted when it's for Shabbat, but is not permitted when it's for a chol. Mem Zayin, 47. Lechem hapanim, the showbread on the table, on the shulchan in the Beit HaMikdash. Ne'achalatisha can be eaten as 9-day-old bread, la'asara as 10-day-old bread, la'acharasar as 11-day-old bread. Lo pachot v'lo yoter, not any less than that, and not any more than that. Ketzad, how is this true? Kedarko latisha, that under ordinary circumstances, it's 9-day-old bread. Ne'efa b'erev Shabbat, and ne'echal b'Shabbat latisha. You bake it on Friday, and then you eat it the following Shabbat a week later. So Friday is day 1, Shabbat is day 2, it goes on the table, and the second Shabbat is day 9, when it is in fact consumed. Chaliot Yom Tov Erev Shabbat. If Yom Tov fell on a Friday, then the showbread was eaten on day 10 because it was baked on Thursday, which was day 1. So Friday is day 2, Shabbat is day 3, the next Shabbat is day 10. And if it was Shneimim Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah, if Rosh Hashanah fell before Shabbat, and it was a 3-day Yom Tov, so to speak, it was a Thursday, Friday, Shabbat, 3-day combination, then the bread was be baked on Wednesday and eaten the following Shabbat, which is day 11. And why is this the case? Because the baking of the showbread would not override neither the Sabbath nor the Yom Tov. Memchet, 48. Amar Rav Yosef, Hani Nashi, Didan, Nogamefa Kefiza Kefizla Pischa. Our women are in the habit of baking for Pesach small amounts of dough at a time. And Rashi explains that the kepiza is shlosha lugin, only 3 lug, which is a relatively small amount. Lechumra as a stringency l'shamim nachimutz, to make sure that the dough doesn't become chametz. Because if you were to try to bake a lot at one time, it would mean preparing a large supply of dough in one sitting, with the possibility that some of that dough might have leavened before it got into the oven. So to avoid that possibility, you only make small doughs at a time. So Amalei Abaye says, Ma data, why do you think this is a good idea? L'chomra, you think it's a stringency? Chomra da'atile de kula, it's actually a stringency that results in a leniency. The kamap kle michala, because as a result of preparing small batches of dough, none of those batches of dough will end up being obligated in the mitzvah of challah, that there is a threshold below which you are not obligated to separate challah, and if you insist upon making batches of small doughs and never large enough to be obligated in challah, then the mitzvah will disappear. So while you had good religious intentions to avoid chametz, in the end it was bad because you avoided challah, and we do not want to avoid challah. Memtet, 49. If a person is on the road to bring their paschal lamb, or to circumcise their child, their son, and you remember that you have chametz back at home. If you're able to go back to burn the chametz and still have time to return to the mitzvah you were intending to do, then go ahead and do that. Go home, remove your chametz, and come back to your circumcision or paschal lamb. But if you do not have time to go back and destroy the chametz physically, and still at the right moment do your mitzvah of Korban Pesach or Bris Milah, then mevatlo belivo, you shall nullify the chametz in your heart, and that alone will suffice to avoid the violation of the chametz law on Pesach, and go ahead and do whatever the mitzvah that you need to do. Interestingly, the Talmud is referring specifically to those 2 positive mitzvot that are associated with the karet penalty, that only Brit Milah and Korban Pesach, only those 2 performative commandments, mitzvot aseh, are associated with karet for failure to abide by those mitzvot. So they are very critical that you fulfill your obligation, which means that you would not squander your opportunity just to go back and burn the chametz. Rather, you would nullify it in your heart. Everyone have a great week.